So welcome everyone. I'm Rochelle. I'm going to be the moderator for this webinar. I'm the Associate Director of Field Training for the MACP program. So welcome to our new webinar series. Today we have the pleasure of hearing from Dr. April Crable. She'll be presenting on self-care as part of the Inspiration and Insight series. She's a licensed professional counselor, a substance abuse counselor, and a sex offender treatment provider with over 25 years experience. So welcome, and I'll pass it over to her for her presentation on self-care today.
Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. So I am Dr. April Crable, and just to give a little bit background about myself, I am new to Yorkville as an adjunct faculty, but not necessarily new to teaching online. I've been doing that for a little bit over 10 years now, and I have also been an online student as well. So I have the pleasure of having the experience from both sides of things. And I am also licensed, as Rochelle mentioned, in several different states. And I've been a licensed professional counselor for probably a little bit over 14 years now. So I'm excited to be here with all of you. And I typically will train on telemental health, ethics, and self-care because those things are very important to me. I also have a telemental health practice outside of Arizona in Scottsdale. So I've been doing that for about 4 years, and self-care has really been helpful for me throughout my career, and definitely when I was a mental health student as well. And so I try to implement self-care into every class that I teach because I think that it's definitely important for us to start early and practicing early because it's so easy for us to definitely get burned out at the end of our program. And so I hope that you all find this information quite helpful. So as I mentioned, what we're going to be talking about is self-care, but before we can get to self-care, we definitely want to look at burnout and factors contributing to burnout and how to have that awareness to identify burnout within ourselves and what that looks like for us. And definitely, what kind of strategies can we use to address burnout? And that's where that self-care plan comes in as well. But also, what's important about self-care is that we want to implement self-care so we can hopefully prevent burnout. It should be something that's used as prevention and not necessarily as an intervention, because I will argue that if you've kind of reached out to burnout, you know that you have not been implementing self-care strategies along the way. So when we look at Dr. Maslach, which her burnout definition, many of you are probably familiar with this already, but just as for review, she explains it as a psychological syndrome of emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, and reduced personal accomplishment that can occur among individuals who work with other people in some capacity. It doesn't necessarily mean that you could not experience burnout if if you didn't work with others, if you was possibly working on a research project alone. But definitely you can see the impact when you are experiencing burnout, how that also impacts others on your team as well. And it also impacts your clients. So some factors that contribute to burnout is unmanageable caseloads. And some of this is my own personal experience. I've worked in community mental health, and you are just assigned caseloads that you could not even imagine. And so sometimes it's just definitely hard to make sure that you providing effective care to everyone, especially based on the standard that when you're in your program, we really aspire you to practice at. And sometimes to meet people day after day, that becomes a little bit, and we feel like you have little control over how many people or how many clients are being assigned to you as well. And poor boundaries. Poor boundaries can contribute to burnout as well, because if you are trying to do everything that you can to possibly help your clients, then that's a sign of poor burnout. If you are working harder for your clients than they are working for themselves, then that's a sign that you possibly have poor boundaries. When you are also thinking about your own poor physical health or mental health, that is something that often I've put aside sometimes early on. I'm like, oh, I definitely have a doctor's appointment, but I'm not quite sure how I'm going to fit that in because I have 15 clients on my caseload today, or I have 30 clients on my caseload for the week, and then I still have to do notes for all of them. And definitely when I was in my master's program, I was also, when I was finishing my master's program, seeing clients, I was also doing a PhD program. And what I found was that I was spending less time putting my needs first because I wanted to take care of everybody else's needs. And lack of involvement in the professional community. So I know for some of you, you are still trying to establish your counselor, your mental health um, identity. Also trying to figure out who I can go to and talk to in the community. But definitely you want to make sure that you build your community. And then just poor self-care, again, not tending to your needs, whether they're your physical needs, your emotional needs, your spiritual needs. And those are kind of some things that we will definitely talk about later in the training. And hopefully I can hear from some of you during our question and answer period as well. And no theoretical foundation for practice. And what that means is that when you are practicing and you have not solidified what your theoretical orientation is. So, for example, I know that my theoretical orientation is CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, but I also know that I can integrate some other things. So, some mindfulness techniques, some solution focused interventions. However, if I'm ever stuck with the client, I know that I can always fall back on CBT. So when people become burnout, experience burnout, I will ask, so what is your theoretical orientation? And oftentimes they're not able to share that with me or share how they actually apply it with their clients. And so they're actually struggling in their sessions to try to figure out where to go. And then that becomes a lot harder because they become stuck. And then that's when sometimes the anxiety kicks in because they're not quite sure where to go with the client next. Other things, when you look at your interpersonal relationships, so what are your relationships like with your colleagues, with your friends, people at home, your family members? Because oftentimes if there's conflict there, then that also contributes to burnout, and it also contributes to how you are acting in the workplace or working with your clients. And fear of supervision or seeking out supervision, that expert syndrome, I see it a lot with professionals who say, well, I've been doing this for 20 years and I don't really need to go out and get continuing ed. I don't really need to be a part of any kind of accountability or a consultation group. Or I've also experienced it with students where they say, Oh, I've been in behavioral health a long time. There isn't pretty much more that I can learn right now. So, but I'm doing this because I have to get this degree. And so you don't ever want to fall into that expert syndrome, because in any career, especially with mental health, we are always learning new things. People are constantly changing. We are constantly changing. And so we want to make sure that we have some outlet to be able to share those changes, to talk about things that we are experiencing with other people, so we are not carrying all of that on our own, because then that begins to become heavy, and we can start experiencing feeling stressed out, and not quite sure what to do next. Also, when you think about your current leadership and structure, especially in a workplace, and what's going on in areas they may not align well with what your ethics are or what your values are. So you definitely want to make sure that you are familiar with, if you take a job, if it's whether it's with practicum, internship experiences, you want to know, well, what is the current structure at this facility, at this agency? What do they stand for? What are their values, and what are their mission? And so it's important to definitely assure that that aligns with what your values and what your beliefs are. And if it doesn't align, then how do you rectify that? How are you able to address all of those things? So, when you think about warning signs of burnout, those are the things that really align with what I was just talking about. And so, when you think about wanting to have that self awareness or that insight, and for me, it was pretty clear when I experienced burnout when I first owned my practice. And but it was only clear after I started having some of these symptoms. And before, I thought everything was really aligned well with me. And I started really taking a hard look at myself. And so, when you think about physical, emotional, and mental exhaustion, you definitely want to figure out, am I feeling more tired than I felt before? Am I putting some things to the side that I really enjoy doing? Am I spending time away from others? So that's where that detachment comes in. Am I having more self-defeating thoughts? And some of those thoughts could be, I'm really not doing a great job. I'm not quite sure why I'm even in this field. Why am I even in this program? Because I definitely not a great writer. So all of those positive affirmations that we should have are now disappearing, and they're not a part of us anymore. And they're being replaced with things and thoughts that are keeping us down. Also, when you think about avoiding responsibilities, that means maybe you are waiting till the last minute to do assignments because it's really not something that you deem important to you, when maybe a few weeks ago, all your assignments were important and you took pride in making sure that you got those done. Maybe clients, if you are practicing or in practicing on an internship right now, using your skills. If clients are stopped coming, or you notice they're not really responding to you like they was responding to you before, that's also a warning sign. When I was practicing years ago with my first practice, I would wake up and I would say, I hope clients don't show up today, which is pretty weird because I depended on them showing up to be able to not only help them, but to also pay all of the overhead that I had for running a private practice. And I found myself not wanting to go to work on those days. And that was a clear sign to me that I was not myself at all. And so thinking about wanting to leave my job, close the practice was definitely a sign that I needed to do some things different or change some things up. The other thing often that people tend to think about with warning signs of burnout, if there's been increase of formal or informal complaints from colleagues, from peers, maybe responding to something or writing something in a discussion post that you would have normally not written because somebody said something to you that maybe gotten under your skin, and then you just responded, and then when you actually took a look back at the post, you're like, oh my goodness, what did I just write? That's not really how I feel, or not how I wanted to represent myself at all. So addressing burnout, and I have a worksheet that I'm gonna hopefully be able to share with all of you and get a copy to all of you of how to develop a self-care plan. What does an actual healthy support system look like? And that was something that I had to learn too while I was going through my master's degree, my PhD degree, and also in the workplace, because I needed to know who was actually committed to saying yes when they noticed things changing in me, that they could say, hey, it seems like you may need to take a break, or you're slacking a little bit in your work, or clients are actually talking about you and trying to figure out what's going on with you. And so I needed a healthy support system to do that. I didn't want anybody who would see me struggling and not say anything, because that's part of our responsibility to each other as mental health practitioners, is to be able to say, hey, I see you struggling. How can I help you? What can I do to support you? And hopefully that is something that you all are able to do with your support system now, and also be able to receive it, because sometimes it's hard to receive actual honest feedback as well. And seek counseling is definitely something that's important, especially now, what's going on in our community, in the world right now. A lot of mental health practitioners are definitely in a place where they are experiencing the same crisis that their clients are experiencing. And that doesn't often happen um, across the world, right? Across the world. And so mental health professionals and students are struggling with, how do I still help clients while trying to figure all of my own feelings out and things that are going on with me or in my family or directly in my community. And so now they're trying to figure out, I need to probably talk to someone who may be handling this a little bit better than I am right now. And there's no shame as a mental health professional to go out and seek counseling. And definitely supervision. So reaching out to someone who's your supervisor, reaching out to another mental health professional, reaching out to someone that you can trust. I've had several students reach out to me just based on what's going on right now, and trying to figure out what to do with all of those feelings. And that's really what supervision is for. It's not just about, hey, clients or my career path, but also to figure some things out in a time that could be very confusing for some people. And again, engaging in healthy diet and exercise plans, getting your health screenings, and not being like me when I first started and thinking that I can put all of those things to the side. and also just compliance with your own physical and mental health plan. Write it out. What does that look like for you? Because research shows that if something is actually written out, we tend to actually follow it. And for the longest time, I was really embarrassed to put out there that I was forgetting to eat during my days of seeing clients, or when I was working on papers, and even now being at home, I'm doing telemental health. It's still a struggle sometimes for me to ensure that I have a healthy balance. And so I have to actually schedule my lunch breaks and schedule breaks for me to stand up and walk and stretch and take my eyes away from the computer into my schedule, because if I don't, then honestly, it would not happen. And then also make a decision to stop practicing. And that could be very challenging for some people, especially if that's their livelihood and that's what they do to bring in for their living, to take care of their home and everything. And so, but just partly of the self-disclosure for me, that time when I had my private practice in the very beginning, I was doing so much with full-time job, part-time private practice, and also doing a PhD program, that I had to stop practicing. And I didn't see clients for a couple of years because I just became so overwhelmed and burned out that I felt like it was better for clients and for myself for me to just take a break from practicing. And I think that was the best thing that I could have done. And it was just the fact that I was in a place that I could do that because I was also doing other things. So sometimes making that hard decision could be the best decision to make, because it was to a place to where I wasn't no longer being effective with clients. So when we talk about addressing burnout, and some of the things that you can do if it's possible is manage your caseload, or just manage your load in general. So managing your load could be, maybe I need to not take 4 classes, maybe I need to take 2 classes, or maybe I don't have 25 clients on my caseload, maybe I'll drop it down to 15. Or also, I know, for example, some people say, well, I put all of my hard clients at the beginning of the week because I just want to get them out the way. And then I will always ask, well, if you gave all of that energy in the beginning of the week, then how much energy did you have by the end of the week for the rest of your clients? So one of the things that I do with my caseload now is I try to stagger my difficult clients and maybe throughout the entire week. So maybe I'll see 1 or 2 a day versus trying to see 10 of them in one day. And again, establishing boundaries. If you have a hard time saying no, or you have a hard time saying when your start and end time of your day is going to be, then definitely you want to set up a schedule. If you are working harder than your clients, then definitely figure out how can you put more of that responsibility and accountability on your clients, because part of what we do for clients is for them to learn independence, and we don't want them to establish dependence on us, because the biggest goal for our clients is for them to eventually leave us and use all of the skills and techniques that we have provided for them, and have them be able to go out and use them effectively. The other thing is just remember remember your passion, recognize your gifts and remind yourself of the rewards. So for me, every now and then I have to tell myself, and you are doing a great job. Yes, there's nobody that's perfect. There's no perfect counselor. There's no perfect employee. And if you are striving for perfection, you will probably get let down because that doesn't exist. And you have to be able to say that I am fulfilling what I can do and feel great about that, and look for inside, just your rewards from the inside, and being able to be confident in the work that you put out and what you do. And then again, maintain CEU. So attending the webinar series, going and looking for conferences, and having conversations with other mental health professionals. So when you think about self-care and what's important for self-care, so self-care helps create a healthy, balanced life. It should not be voluntary. It should be voluntary and not forced. No one should have to force you to take care of yourself. And it also prevents practitioner burnout. It increases productivity. I know when I am practicing healthy self-care strategies, I definitely feel a lot better. When I wake up in the morning, I tend to get a lot of things done off my list for that day. But I also know that if I stayed up all night watching some type of show or an entire series, and I wake up the next morning, I can definitely feel it, because now I've probably only gotten 5 hours of sleep versus the 8 hours that I know that I definitely need. And also want to make sure that you realize that self-care is prevention and not intervention. And if you using it as intervention, it's probably a little bit too late. And it's good to start practicing and building that right now, because self-care is like a skill. Any skill that you learn, you know that if you don't practice it on a regular basis, it may be challenging or a lot harder for you to pick it up. So if you start now, it'll become just a part of who you are, a part of your everyday living, which makes it a lot easier. So there's different types of self-care categories, and I talked a little bit about them. So when you think about sensory, emotional, spiritual, physical, and social, so these are the ways that we really want to make sure that we are contributing to all of these things in our lives. And so what I did was just a little bit to go through how some of these strategies can actually fit in each of those categories. So when you think about sensory, there's aromatherapy, listening to relaxing playlists, full body moisturize, breathe fresh air, which as a telemental health provider, I'm always in the house. And so I actually have in my schedule, go outside and just get some air, some fresh air into your lungs, and smell what you smell, the flowers, the tree, whatever it is out there, so that I'm aware that now I've also taken a 10-minute break in between my day to get out and do some things. So when you look at emotional, decreased screen time, this is something that I actually just did. I started implementing a fast off of social media, because again, emotionally, reading news and things that are going on right now can be emotionally exhausting, and sometimes you're just not aware of it. And so I just did a fast for 24 hours to stay off of all social media outlets and not watch the news. And it was interesting because I had a conversation with a supervisee of mine, and what she said was she felt like not watching the news and not reading the post about the protests and the rioting and people's thoughts, she actually felt guilty about that. She felt like if she didn't read those things, that it was saying that she didn't care about it. And so just being able to have those open and honest conversations with people in safe places actually can help give you a different perspective on things. And again, say affirmations, and those are those things that I was talking about, of saying, hey, you are, even if it's just as simple as saying, hey, you are doing the best that you can do right now. You are maintaining those healthy boundaries. And then also take vacations. They don't have to be elaborate vacations. They can be vacations in your home. They could be one-day vacations of maybe just driving out and doing some things, which has been very difficult for a lot of people, for mostly everyone, because of COVID-19 right now, but just trying to definitely establish how you can still meet your emotional needs. So when you think about spiritual, that could be pour into just anything that pours into your spiritual self, whatever that is for you. Volunteer, engage in social advocacy, participate in any religious or spiritual activities as well. And then physical, any kind of exercise, invest in desk exercise equipment. A lot of times, for the longest, I was unsure a few years ago, like, why is this person moving up and down? What are they doing at their desk? And I just finally had to ask the one a few years ago, and they were actually sitting on their yoga ball, or they had the walker that sits directly under your desk. And so that's quite helpful as well. Of course, do yoga, play a sport, just get outside and do something, or do something inside. There's a lot of videos now, things on YouTube that you can engage in if you aren't able to get outside. So with social, again, that's just having time with other people. So you can do that by video conferencing right now, because I am not able to get out and do anything socially. I've been playing charades every week online, and it's been kind of fun for me. You can do family game nights. You can do coffee and tea chat. I do that quite often as well through video conferencing. And then just some other things. So guided meditation has been really helpful for me and for some other people that I've talked to. Engage in anything that makes you laugh. So that might be going back to watching cartoons from childhood, watching comedy skits online, or just being funny and crazy with your family. Adult coloring is very helpful. I do that a lot with some of my clients who have a hard time with anxiety and sitting or not really opening up. Sometimes we will just color throughout session. And then the last thing I want to say is just schedule me time at the end of the day. And so I wanted to take a few minutes to show you the self-care worksheet, and then we can stop for any questions, for question and answer. So I'm hoping that everyone can see this worksheet right now. And with the worksheet, it's actually something that will align exactly what we talked about. So it's just different questions about what are your 3 self-care strategies now that you are using. And then when you think about that, you also want to think about, have they been helpful? Are you actually engaging in those strategies? And then here, there's a list here at the bottom that will help you with questions 2, and should be, oh, the numbers are out of order, but it should be able to help you with all of these. So I just kind of gave you a list of things here that I talked about, some other things, the coloring here. I think I gave you a guided method. I will be able to share this with you all and fill it out. So that's all that I had to share today. I hope definitely that this has been helpful. I chose this topic because so many people are right now trying to establish self-care and to figure out some things to do. And I'm looking forward to hearing from all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was such a great talk, such an important topic, especially for us in the helping field. So I'm gonna look through the questions. I saw one come into the chat box. CEUs, what is this abbreviation?
Oh, I apologize. So CEUs are continuing health credits, so units that when you attend conferences, you get those credit for those hours for attending. And definitely how it works for practitioners, mental health practitioners in the United States, that most states require counselors to engage in some sort of continuing education to maintain their license.
It'd be the same in Canada. I believe it's 36 continuing education credits for every 3 years that you're a CCC member. So the question.
Oh, wow. And yeah.
Is that about the same in the States?
Yeah, typically it's about the same, but we usually have to send them in every year or every 2 years.
Okay, I'm pretty sure it's every 3 years for the CCPA, but I could be off there. So questions. Hello, thank you for this webinar. What are the best strategies to solidify my theoretical orientation? Should I consider additional certification before going into private practice?
So that's a great question. So depending on where you are in your program, I can speak from my experience that it definitely changed a little bit the more that I learned about different orientations, but you want to also look at orientations that speak to you as a person. Also want to be able to engage and try different techniques from other orientations under supervision. And so that way it can give you an idea of what aligns well with you. Also, what aligns well with the population that you want to work with. So doing some reading on evidence-based interventions specific to your population, but also thinking about really what aligns well with you. And sometimes if you work for an organization, you may not have a lot of say in what theoretical orientation you will use, but it's just important for you to have a basic foundation for yourself. And that second part of your question, do you need additional certifications? Not necessarily certification, but I would say you would want to have enough training that you can provide evidence-based treatment and interventions to that population.
Thank you. Will your slides and worksheets be made available for download?
I'm willing to give them. I'm just not, and so I will definitely research how to get those to everyone.
Sure, we can figure that out. I was a bit surprised by the theoretical orientation being a potential area for burnout. Is the goal then to address the current relationship with the primary orientation or explore using other approaches to see if burnout is reduced?
Well, I think the goal is to make sure that you have a theoretical orientation, because oftentimes the burnout comes in when you are not sure where to go next with the client and you are just pulling from different things. And when you are doing that, then you're working a lot harder in the session, because when something comes up from a client, then you're thinking, oh, what do I do next? Where do I go next with this? Or when you're trying to establish rapport with the client, if you have a solid theoretical orientation, your theoretical orientation actually walks you through interventions and techniques to use with building rapport, how to terminate with a client. That all comes from your theoretical orientation, what interventions to use in session. That all comes from your theoretical orientation. So if you don't have that, you're actually, you may experience some anxiety, some stress about how do I help this client? And so that can contribute to burnout.
And the next question is, do you have any tips for sticking to a self-care schedule?
The only tips that I found for me was to put it in my schedule. I live by my schedule. And so if it's not in my calendar, it's not getting done. So I put it out. I use my Outlook calendar quite often. It's in my phone, it's everywhere. So I have to build it into my calendar, but that works for me. Other colleagues, they actually have a whiteboard in their office of their task every day, and that's also a part of the task that they use is implementing self-care.
Thank you. What do you do when people in your life, not clients, ask you for help, or when you think they need help but don't ask?
Yes, I refer them to other people. Honestly, because people will do that often because they know that you are in a helping profession. And so they feel safe and comfortable coming to you, and that's a normal response. But you have to be able to have boundaries and take that on and say, honestly, I can't help you. I know in the States with, as part of our ethics, we ethically cannot help friends and family. So, but I can assist them in finding someone who can help them. And so I keep very strong boundaries with that.
Thank you. The next question, have you found that burnout can lead to PTSD?
Well, not necessarily burnout lead to PTSD, but I think we can actually have vicarious trauma from our clients and the things that we have experienced from them. And so then when you think about that vicarious trauma, it is also burnout, because if you can't manage it well and you're taking all of those in, then definitely it could lead to you experiencing your own trauma, which will probably mean that if it's not managed well, if you're not seeking counseling or supervision, you may experience burnout.
Thank you. Slacking off, being lazy versus burnout. How would you distinguish between the two? Is it the level of motivation?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's definitely going to be some days that you just want to relax and do nothing. Um, are definitely okay. I think if you have more days of that and less days of being motivated to do things, or if you have those self-defeating thoughts that I talked about, or if you just don't feel like ever doing anything, or you start questioning why you are in the role you're in or in the career you're in, then I think that's a sign. But definitely having lazy days. I have those days that I'm saying, I'm not gonna probably do anything today. And matter of fact, I just told that to my spouse earlier today. I said, tomorrow I'm not doing anything tomorrow, but I don't have any responsibilities to do anything tomorrow. So I can take that day. But if abilities, I would be lazy.
Thank you. Can you talk about challenges as a minority woman that might be facing in the industry? Any tips?
Yes. So that's a great question, because I think I'm a part of probably two different minors, right? One being a woman and one being a Black woman as well. And so what I've done was really establish a strong support system of people who are experiencing things like me, who I could feel safe with talking to. So again, that honesty and that transparency is very important to me in my support system. And that's what's really been helping me a lot, is making sure that I'm reaching out to my support system, and also pouring back into my support system, and also engaging in social advocacy as well.
Yeah. As you have significant experience offering telemental health services online, what advice would you give someone considering this path for their practice?
Oh, wow. It's so much. I think what I would really consider is whether or not you have training with technology and providing telemental health services. So really engaging in continuing education with that. There are a lot of trainings now. I think some people believe that it's just as simple as turning on a computer and having your client in front of the computer, but it's so much more. So looking into a good platform, electronic health records for clients, establishing, changing all of your now paperwork that you have for your regular practice, and move all of that towards language for telemental health, and also knowing what the regulations are for telemental health in your country, in your state, wherever you are, to make sure that you are adhering to those. But it's definitely a lot of work to be able to transition from one to the other. So just really to think about that, and to think about if it fits for you, because just like for clients, telemental health isn't for everyone. It isn't for every clinician either. So just really doing some self-awareness.
You. What is one thing that you wish you would have known or considered before entering private practice?
How to run a business. Honestly, that's the one thing that I wish I would have known, because not a lot of counseling programs, they prepare you to be counselors or mental health practitioners, but they don't prepare you a lot of times of how to run a business. And that is something that I definitely wish um, um, I would have known about before I went into private practice. And yeah, so had to learn a lot of things the hard way. And I did see the chat. I saw the chat. I can see chats pop up a little bit. So I definitely appreciate the comment about minority being marginalized. And I think that is something that's definitely being worked across being changed. And so I was responding to the language that the person used with the question. So I definitely appreciate that chat comment, and I couldn't see where it came from. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Do you have any advice on how to distance yourself when working with difficult cases? How to minimize effects of vicarious trauma on your personal life?
Supervision and consultation. That's really the best way that I've been able to do that. So not trying to take that on by myself. In my informed consent for clients, I let them definitely know that I'm a part of a supervision consultation group. I will not share their own share their identifying information, but I do consult, and I explain the importance with clients about why I consult with other practitioners.
So back to the chat. Can you make any recommendations for improving boundaries?
So self-care, definitely having constant self-reflections on what you're doing, your approach, talking to other people, also doing check-ins with your clients are very important to make sure that they are feeling safe, that this is a safe place for them. Also teaching them and giving them information on what a healthy therapeutic relationship looks like. Is not saying that it's putting any responsibility on maintaining boundaries, because that's all on you in a therapeutic relationship. But they also need to be informed and aware, so when they can feel like maybe this something isn't quite right, that they can be affirmed in their thoughts as well. But definitely all of those things is what I use for maintaining boundaries.
What advice do you have for someone trying to decide on entering into the mental health profession, currently an adult educator?
I think going back to trying to figure out your reason for going into mental health. I know sometimes a lot of people tend to want to work out things that they experience in their own life through their program. But if you feel like you really want to help people, this is something that you believe that you would be great at. Also talking to other mental health professionals so you can get an idea about what this looks like. And that was an approach that I had to take because my career path was totally something different. And it wasn't until I started talking to other people in the field that I decided to change and do this, because it really spoke to me and I became passionate about helping other people. And so definitely take some time to think about it, research it, talk to other people to ensure that this is really what you want to do.
Right, and I think this is the last question. What are some tips you can offer to other Black mental health practitioners who are in training right now and wanting to make their future practice meaningful and social justice oriented?
Again, I think talking to other Black mental health professionals, or because right now that's something that, and I'm not sure, there are plenty of Facebook groups that right now that have for people of color, for Black professionals to really kind of talk about how they can help, what they can do, figuring out what other yourself out there and having those types of conversations with people, and researching what's going on in your community, and it can happen in so many different ways. And so just really engaging in those conversations.
We did just get one more question
I mean,
pop up.
basically that's what's important. I'm sorry, Rosh, I didn't hear you.
Oh, sorry, we just had one more question pop up, and then that'll probably be it for the hour. I hadn't thought that working harder at helping the client than they are working on helping themselves may be a sign of poor boundaries. Can you talk more about this?
Oh, Rosh, I missed the first beginning of it. Oh, you know,
Sorry.
now it's okay.
I hadn't thought that working harder at helping the client than they are working on helping themselves may be a sign of poor boundaries. Can you talk more about that?
Yes. So example of that. So if you are asking your client to complete homework assignments and giving them skill, they're not practicing it, and you just having to keep reminding them on a regular basis of why this is important to do. Or if you having clients who are showing up for sessions and they need you to call them right before a session just to have them come in, that's working harder for your client than they're working for them. If you start to do that, and you start doing that for every client, then it becomes more of you taking on responsibility for your client's mental health, responsibility for their own mental health, and coming into sessions and doing their work, or using part of your sessions to make calls for them. May need to be making these calls for themselves, but they just haven't gotten around to it. And so then it becomes you working hard, and that's really not alongside our clients to assist our clients, to be supportive of our clients, but they also have to do those things and have independence.
Thank you. That's all the questions in the Q&A and the chat box. So thanks so much for attending today and sharing on such an important topic. It was really well done. We really appreciate the talk today.
Yeah, thank you. All of you really appreciated the questions as well. I appreciated it and hope I get to work with some of you.
Right. Well, thanks so much. And I will end the Zoom session. So everyone take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.